Okay, so here we're jumping into play in Clash of the Monarchs, and starting out in 1756 with Prussia taking the first action. And after buying, they spent a card, actually my trial game looked better, but they spent a card to buy themselves a supply action. I believe supply actions are useful. You can't do sieges and the like without them, but I could only expend a 1-point card, as it were. Chose not to throw anything into the Kleiner Creek boxes. Stuff over in Silesia, there isn't a lot there, a couple of hussars, and I need them for the advantage they provide to the armies. Basically, a leader is indicated as either having or not having light units attached. Having light units gives you certain maneuverabilities that are advantageous. And there's a big pile of them over with Frederick, but those are in the northern theater at the beginning of the game, starting up here in Magdeburg, and unable to really affect anyone except the Russians, who aren't in the game at this point. At this point, only Prussia and Austria are belligerent. I took the historical picks for things in terms of standings. So Prussia picked, I'm going to go invade Saxony. Austria picked a delayed entry. Everyone else, their picks make them remain non-belligerent. The attack Saxony option improved France's, well, actually it's this, the invasion of Saxony card. Now, each side is guaranteed a handful of cards at the beginning of the game, and one of the cards that you're guaranteed as the Prussians is the invasion of Saxony. So now this card allows the Prussians to activate 3 forces, and they chose Frederick over here, and then a couple of these Silesian ones. When I test played, those came in handy as well. And just walking through these fortresses is sufficient for them to fall, even with the garrison in place, as far as I can understand. Ratowski, the Saxon leader, failed in an attempt to withdraw, so he's going to fight a field battle. And I'm going to roll that out for you. So, the way we do a field battle is the first thing we have to compare is, well, one of the things we have to see is what kind of battle is it going to be. Let me grab Frederick off the board. He's sitting on a major force marker. And you compare the... Actually, the first thing that happens is both sides draw an additional tactical chit. The way the rules are written, Ratowski's black, Austrians aren't black, the chits that they drew aren't black. So I don't think I can use Austrian tactics for their minor allies. Could be wrong about this. I'm not sure why they gained them from it, but whatever. That's the way I understand the rules, and we'll go with that. But what's important here is Frederick has a red around his attacking value, and among other things, that means this is going to be an intense battle. So we use the intense battle chart as opposed to the measured battle chart. Less dice and bigger possible swings to the events. Okay. So then we look through a list of values here, and Commander DRM, okay. Frederick's at a 4. Ratowski's defense is a 1. Successful tactics, the Prussians played superior infantry fire. That's going to give them a +2, so they're up to a 6. Prussians have field artillery that brings them up to a +7. I believe they have cavalry superiority. That brings them up to a +8. They're not going to get all this. The attacker's in an enemy fort space. That drops it back down. And that's what we got. We're looking at +7 for the Prussians, +1 for the Saxons. I roll. And it's a bad roll for the Prussians. They get an 11. The Saxons get an 8. I had much better before. So now I have to total my strength points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So I've got 26 at 11. So I look at that 26 strength point. I go down to an 11. And I'm going to inflict a 5d3 plus. Now, I have to remember that. And I'll remember that this way. They take 5d3. There's also a plus result. I'll try to remember that as well. But let's go to the other side. 2, 3, 9. And they had an 8. So 8 strength points with a 9. They inflicted a 1d1. Okay. So what happened here? Well, nobody rolled a natural 6, which could cause leader casualties. There are other ways that they can happen, if there had been an asterisk or whatever. But otherwise, we start taking our losses here. And what do we see? Let's see what we got here. Okay. So the first is the actual casualties, and the Saxons have to take 5. Every 4th one has to be a cavalry. So they'll take 1 point off their cavalry unit, and then they lose 4 off of the 6. Which means I grab some counters. They got 2 strength points left, but this is a game where force pools are important, because you can only build what you have in your force pool. So that's the Saxon losses to begin with. And the Saxons came back and they only did 1 to the Prussians. And I'll flip a Prussian infantry for that. And I have to keep track of that in the force pool as well. Okay. What about the D result? Well, each nation has a certain endurance. And at this point, the Prussian endurance base is 3 plus 1 for Frederick, because he's got a plus. So he's got an endurance of 4. 1 is less than 4. He's unaffected. On the other side, the Austrians or the Saxons have an endurance of 2, and they took a 3, so they're going to be demoralized. Now, the losses were not quite sufficient to rout. I don't remember what the conditions for that are. But I can assure you they didn't make it this time. Because I didn't make it the last time, and this was worse. Or this wasn't as effective. Let me see. I can't see it. Okay. Not a rout. So crushing victory. That's what it was. Okay, so it would have had to be at least 10 strength points at start, and it wasn't that big. Therefore, there was no chance of a crushing defeat. So now, Rutkowski gets to leave. I'm going to make his stack smaller, with the better unit. And he pulls back to Pirna. And currently, I'll use this because I don't think there are Saxon held spaces. No, not that. Currently there's a siege. Well, not a siege, but the Saxons still own the city there. And these other forces now get to continue because I'm allowed to move 3 forces. And I'll see if I can take Pirna at the same time. So continuing in the turn, after the battle, Kowski withdrew to Pirna, and Schwerin then activated over at Breslau and moved there. Ratowski withdrew, leaving one unit back in Pirna. And then I moved additional forces into Pirna from Liegnitz, and this is all because of this Invasion of Saxony card. One other thing it allowed me to do was to move a supply depot from Magdeburg down all the way to Dresden. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if I mentioned this. I know I meant to. About the map. This and this are different. There are 2 different kinds of roads, and they're almost connections, and they're almost indistinguishable in this game. Now that makes it kind of nice for like not having to notice connections and stuff like that. So maybe the map looks like that beautiful series of bubbles rather than anything else. But it does make it harder to play the game, and given that it's a point-to-point game, the map ain't gonna be pretty anyhow. I mean, just face it. You can't hide bubbles. The map is a bunch of bubbles. You can't change that. So, and you especially can't do it with such dull tones. I know it's kind of pretty and everything, but it's just not the way to do it. If you're going with point to point, you're doing it because that makes play easier. It makes it easier to see the connections or whatever for somebody, I don't know who, because it's clearly most of us process things by areas. This is not a bad game in terms of connectivity, although there are places where you'd say, whoa, why aren't those connected? Well, that's kind of what point to point is all about, is, hey, let me express the terrain in a way that isn't really spatially correct, but, you know, I can make things not connected or whatever. But it makes it harder to see, at least for this human. Anyway, no reason to make the job worse. You're already putting all those ugly bubbles on there. You might as well make the connections somewhat distinct. Okay, so let us go to what else happened. Right, so we're at the... I also took an administrative movement to pull somebody from here over to Magdeburg. You can see you can do a lot. Most of this doesn't cost anything. It just kind of comes to you for free. Now I'm at the siege segment. Now, one of the things I was able to do a little before that was, because no battle was fought in Pirna, I could put a siege marker there. Now I get to roll on the siege table. Now, there are effects on the siege table. First of all, this is a level 2 city, and you can tell that by how many levels of this is hard to see. How many levels of kind of outlining something has. There are level 3 cities. I'm not sure I can distinguish them. I think that's one. There aren't a lot of them. Okay. And then I grab a bunch of die roll modifiers here. It's not a tiny garrison, that's if no one's there. It's not a large garrison. That would have to be at least 4 guys. Besieger's not demoralized. I believe there is siege artillery in this stack. No supply effects. So, essentially, I'm just rolling a single die over on this chart, which is pretty simple. I get a 6, which is a surrender, so that's going to fall. Generally, you get smaller rolls that add to your modifier over time, but that's kind of a bonus for the Prussians.